Hi, I've had several questions about how you can tell the difference between an academic or a professional journal. What's the difference between them? So I thought it might be helpful to go through some of the differentiators that you can be watching for. And although this isn't going to give you a perfect answer for every single article you're going to come across, it will be helpful for most of those that you'll have a look at so that you'll be able to see whether you can put it in one category or the other. And this will be, of course, important for your assignments that are coming up and also for your research project. So let's have a look. And I apologize for some of the spacing here. I've tried to make them even with the color so you can see what I'm talking about as we go across the charts. Okay, so in this column we have the academic journal, and in this column we have the professional journal. And here, down here are some of the differentiators that you can be looking for. So first would be the format. In an academic journal, you'll find that it's almost completely text. There may be some charts, there may be some graphs, that sort of thing, but almost never are there pictures in an academic journal. And if there are, there's some particular kind of significance for them. They're not just there for decoration. Whereas in a professional journal, often you'll find that the text is broken up with quotes that are emphasized in little boxes and that sort of thing. And you'll often find that there are pictures accompanying it, even if it's just to begin, or there's kind of like a side column with a picture in it and that sort of thing. So they may take up the preponderance of the article, or they may take up only a small part, but they're generally there. And the reason for that is because a professional journal is for busy people, and the author and the editor are trying to get your attention so that you'll be engaged by the article that's there. And it isn't that the academic writer doesn't care, or even the academic editor, but it's I guess a convention, and it's a way of being efficient with the space in a journal as well. In terms of length, this is a big giveaway. Usually academic journal articles are much longer than professional journal articles. Now, I can't say that's always the case, but almost always it's the case. You know from your readings that an academic journal article is often 25 pages or more, and much of that space will be taken up with references. So you may have 3 or 4 pages of references, whereas in a professional journal, the article will be shorter and there will be fewer references, if any. In some cases, there won't be any at all, if it's just simply a report on a meeting, for example. The audience for an academic journal is researchers and academics. Most people are not going to pick up an academic journal and just read it for the fun of it. But researchers and academics are interested in not only the subject matter, but also how the author got to where they got to with their research. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about the subjects that tend to be taken up in academic journals. But this is where you'll find the preponderance of your readers. Now, there may be professionals that will be interested as well, and they may, in fact, look at the professional journals. Certainly in some of the sciences, like medicine, for example, doctors are trying to keep up with the research journals. But in essence, it's for researchers and academics. So, and professional journals tend to be for practitioners, and that's not to say, again, that researchers don't read them. They often do, but these are oriented to the needs of a practitioner. So they take up a topic that's of interest, and they get to the point. So that's kind of where the differentiation lies. The subject matter tends to be different as well. In an academic journal, it's mostly reporting on research that's taken place. So somebody has done a research project of some magnitude that is going to offer something new to the academic audience. And so the reviewer, or rather the editor, will be an expert in the field as well. They'll have a look at this research report and they'll say, this is something that's going to be helpful to those who are interested in this topic. It will give them some new information that they can use. It also may be a meta-analysis. Now, this is a little bit different than a literature review. This is taking on a topic and then looking at how that the handling of that topic may have changed over time in the journal. So, for example, I in one of my courses, I often assign an article by an author who looked at the articles that had been written over, I think it was about 30 years, on gender and educational administration, and how the topic of gender got taken up across that time. So in a sense, it is a literature review in a way, but we're not looking at themes so much as a critique of how a topic has been taken up and thought about over a period of time. That's generally what meta-analysis will do. The subject matter for a professional journal is going to be focused on practice in the case of education in schools, or policy and its effects on schools, that sort of thing. So it's going to be more practice oriented, whereas this may affect practice eventually, but it will be a small part, a small look, or not even a small look, but a look at a more discrete piece of practice, and looking at it in significant depth. Okay, the language in an academic journal is specific to the discipline, and it's most often not easily accessible. And you probably had that experience. I know I certainly have, where you read an article, it's about something that new that you're looking at, and the language is changing. It has to change because there's something, they're looking at something that doesn't have an expression in language yet. So the language gets altered and changed. So you're reading it, and it really takes concentration to figure out what it is that the author is talking about. Whereas the professional journal is meant to be more accessible because it's for busy professionals who are going to pick it up in their staff room, or for a book group, or a discussion group, or something like that. And so it needs to be more accessible. It's not to say that the subject matter is more worthy, it's just handled differently. And oftentimes, actually, academic writers will write for a journal and then alter that piece of information so that it's more accessible for a professional audience who don't want to spend the time reading a 35 or 40 page article. In terms of vetting the article, both of them are going to be chosen by an editor who will be editor of the journal. But in the case of an academic journal, it will be peer-reviewed. So it's sent out to 2 or often more experts in that particular field who will have a look at it, will say, yes, this speaks to the discipline in an important way and needs to be published, or there's some issues here, we'd like to see it published, but the author needs to change this, this, and this. And it's not unusual for an author, and I speak from experience, to have an article accepted with revisions. And so that means that you're going to revise. It goes back to the reviewers. They may or may not accept those revisions. They may make more suggestions, may make more revisions, and then it's finally gotten to the point where it's going to be published. Whereas in a professional journal, it's reviewed by the editor and usually not by anyone else. So the editor has the power to say, yes, this belongs in this journal. The editor may be concerned about some writing conventions and that sort of thing, but and may edit it for that purpose, but it's not going to be concerned about the rigor of the content of the research behind the article, and that sort of thing. So it's vetted in a different sort of way for the particular audience that it's meant for. The authors for an academic journal generally have a university or college connection, and you'll often find that at the bottom of the article or at the end of the article, there will be a little box or blurb that says something about the author, their academic affiliation, and where they can be reached, so that anyone who reads the article can contact that author. The authors in professional journals may or may not be, you may not get may or may not get information about how to contact them, but they'll certainly be identified, and generally they're practitioners, or they're related to the practice in some way. So for example, if a manufacturer has come up with a new product that will do something significant for practice in schools, they may write an article and the editor may say, yes, in this case, an economic enterprise is okay in this journal and they get to publish. Or just maybe somebody related to practice, for example, a community group or a parent group that has some clout in terms of their political, their size and their ability to go to the government and say, we want this to happen and that to happen. They may write an article in a professional journal. So that gives you an idea of many of the differences. Now, what I haven't put down here are reports. And sometimes, quite often actually, you'll find when you're doing your library searches that a report will come up by a professional organization. And it will have lots of PhDs that have worked with that report and that sort of thing. This is not the same thing as a peer-reviewed article, because often those articles, those reports are not peer-reviewed. So that's the difference again. Now, it falls into a different category. It's very close often to an academic journal article, and sometimes I'll accept it depending on the rigor of what's put forward. But if it's simply a report on a report, so a committee has put together a bunch of information about something and then they report back to the professional audience without any vetting, without much access to, or at least the reader's access to the kind of research that they've used in their report, that's a little more problematic. So that's where sometimes there's confusion. But in terms of differentiating academic and professional journals, if you follow these guidelines, I think that you'll be able to see the differences between them fairly readily. So I hope this is helpful. And certainly if you come across something and you're still, I'm really not sure, and I've gone through these differences and it still isn't totally clear to me, just send me off the reference and I'll have a look at it and we can talk a little bit about why I would make a judgment one side or the other. One other proviso is that often books, academic books, are not vetted. They are not peer reviewed. They are simply vetted by the editor. In other cases, they are. So, for example, I just finished a book last year in which, I think it was last year, it's gone so quickly, anyway, the year before perhaps, where we went through several iterations. I think we went through 3 iterations. It was an edited book. And so I had to get in touch with the writers, various writers, and have them edit their articles according to what the reviewers had to say. So many of the university presses, ours was through McGill Queen's University Press. Many of the university presses like that, Toronto, etc., University of Toronto Press, and so on, will do peer reviews, but not all of them. However, in most cases, a book is not published by an academic press, and that, there's a lot of them, so I'm not going to go into it now, without that person being well known in the field. And so I would suggest if you have questions about a book, whether it's useful, it's going to be useful in your academic work, kind of go through these same tests to see whether or not you think it fits in one or the other. And if there's still confusion, let me know. Okay, I hope that's helpful, and sorry to have gone on so long, but I hope that this is worth it. And if you have any questions further to this, please feel free to let me know. Take care.